everybody knows that replay is of marginal value for deciding on whether or not your strategy is of any value. But it's useful for testing purposes, and I am doing a replay from June, I think.
Okay, so there's the contract management. If you can stop.
And let me just
contract
make
management
the
is
screen
kind of
more
what I
bigger.
wanted to.
So basically, it entered a trade. It saw that this was a bar that it wanted to get into. It entered a trade at the blue triangle near the top of the bar, and then it pulled back right away. And two of the stops were touched, and so those trails triggered, and two of the positions closed. The other position is still open, and that's represented by the cyan-colored line that angles up from one bar to the next, and by the indicator on the right that says 1361.4. That's the level of the trailing stop. The gray indicator at the top that says 1361.9 is the current price. Now, underneath contract management here in the Engine Trader toolbar, where there's a blue bar with the up and down triangles, you can move up and down your trailing stops, either all at once by clicking in the blue bar, or just one position at a time by clicking adjacent to the two, say, in the cyan area. So this is running. We're watching the price at the top of the chart, and our last position is still open. We could close it by clicking here or here. That would close all the positions. Now, it just got stopped out. You can see right there that the position came down, the price came down and hit it, and it was stopped out. That was a good trade. It all happened in two bars, though, so it's difficult to see all the contract management features. What I'm going to do is accelerate the replay again and let it pick up the next trade. Okay, so here again, we're in a trade. It's a long trade. And you can see we still have two positions, each of two contracts open. And on the right side again, the 1361.9 represents the trailing stop for the third position. The magenta 1362.0 represents the trailing stop for the second position. The first position already closed. It has a very tight trailing stop. It's more of a scalper. And you can see right here the second position just hit its trigger B and bumped up. And the third position's trailing stop is still lagging behind because that's our intention. It's supposed to be a runner. Price is still up at 1363.3. I've got a trail at 1362.9 and another at 1362.2. If I want to bring that 1362.2 up manually, I can click on the triangle and bump it up. As I was bumping it, it hit the B trail. It hit the B trigger and pulled it up. But see those trails following the price action? The price fell and closed them both out. So the trigger bumped them up and followed them appropriately because it's defined that as the price gets over a certain point, then it brings the trail up. And that's exactly what it did. Very profitable trade there. Dragging those trails up behind it. See if we can enter another one here. Well, you can all email me, and you must have my email address if you're on this webinar. It's techsupport1@autodaytrade.com. Just recognize, though, that we're only offering this for a short time. As I stated in the webinar itself, I had to fight Rustin and some of the other executives to actually even offer this because it does contain quite a bit of semi-proprietary information in it. And so we're only offering it during the Indiegogo campaign. When the campaign's over, then we're no longer offering this product. I believe we're in day 4.
That's a big thing.
Or day 5 of the Indiegogo campaign, so there would be 10 or 11 days left in which to decide. So I want you to make sure you understand that. If you want to get in on this, you have to get to it before that time. But if you want another webinar, if you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm happy to do all those things. Please just email me, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. If there are a whole bunch of you, we'll do a 1-on-3 or 1-on-4 go-to-meeting. If there are only a few of you, we'll do one-on-ones. Just let me know. I'll do whatever you want. And I can see, because of the way I programmed this robot, that the volume indicator, which I told it was required to ask for a trade for any trades to be executed, did in fact ask, and that's what the circle down here in the volume indicator means. The thermodynamic did in fact ask for a trade. That's what the vertical bar means. And again, you can completely program that to do whatever you want. And the FibPro Micro asked for a trade. That's what the down pointing blue arrow means. And again, I programmed it to say that, so I know that that's what it means. The trade was entered short. That's what the round dot or red ball means. And it's still going on. Now, it might get anti-lingered if it keeps going on too long, because it hasn't, the cyan position still hasn't moved out of its initial stop. We'll just have to watch it and see. If it goes, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, if it goes 9 bars and hasn't shifted more than 2 ticks, it kills the trade and gets you set up for another trade instead of just sitting in a trade where the market is uncertain. Let's speed it up a little here to see what happens. Yep, it killed the trade. Actually made a tiny bit of money on it, but it killed the trade. The way it kills the trade in anti-linger is the same as it does for the profit targets. It doesn't close it. Instead, it moves the trailing stop up to a tick off the current price action, so that if it does move, it can follow it. But if it comes back, it stops it right at that point. Right away, we got in another trade. This one was a loser on the first position. You can see that the first position got stopped out right away. Now here's an example of where you just might not like the way things are going. You might say, I just don't like it. It doesn't look like it's moving in the direction the robot thought. So all you do is click on the Close All Positions button here. And we got out of that trade. It's done. Now we'll move and see if we've made a mistake. Okay, again here, let's go over the indicators on the chart. This is what I have programmed. The circle down here in the volume indicator means that the volume is calling for a trade. It says, yes, we've exceeded our minimum and our threshold line. The thermodynamic is calling for a long trade. That's what the blue vertical line means. And the FibPro Micro is calling for a trade. That's what the very small up arrow right under my mouse is. And the trigger calculated that all those actually agree, and that's what the blue dot means. The blue dot says, yep, we're going for a long trade. What I've dragged over here is the strategy that's running. And again, you define it over in the strategy management console. And I was saying earlier that the circle that's shown on the volume indicator is programmed in. Well, if I go back and look at the volume indicator over here, you can see that the signal in the blue rectangle area here says, when it signals, give me a vertical line, this yellow. You can see that that does happen if you look back on the chart right there. and give me a transparent dot at the price location. And right at that point right there, that's where I get my dot. So I know that that signal happened. I was saying that the thermodynamic indicates its signal with this vertical blue line for long, and it does a vertical blue line, vertical red line for short. If I go over to the thermodynamic, I can see that. Here is, let me make it a little shorter so it lines up a little better. There we go. Here's the long trade signal. All it is, vertical line, blue, width of 1. And if it were a short signal, if it were calling for a short trade, it would be saying, okay, vertical line, red, solid, width of 1. And that's what's coming up on the chart here. And look right here, we just got a trade signal from the thermodynamic saying go short, and from the volume indicator saying a trade is okay, and from the Fib Pro Micro saying go short. That's what the down arrow means in cyan there. We're still open on the third contract. The first and second have closed. I can't really tell without expanding it whether or not they were winners. When it all happens inside a single bar, there's not that much information to work with. Looks like it went up a tick, so they were probably both losers. But so far, since I started this up, we're up $360 in about 6 hours, which I'd be happy with. But again, we're not giving you the settings. These are my settings. This isn't even what we use in one of our current robots. This is my own gold settings that I use. So, to go further into what's behind here, that's the setup alerts. Some of these have some pretty specific settings, like the Volume Pro. We went into this earlier. The minimum and the threshold. You set them over here in the console, but also, as I showed you in the presentation, you could turn on the volume tool strip, and you could modify those right here inside while it's running. For example, let's take the threshold, and instead of making it a % of the last 50 bars, let's just make it a 200 fixed. There, now it's fixed. Now watch what happens. See down here in the indicator? Now you've got to exceed that line for the volume to qualify. Now it's up at 200. If we go back into the strategy management console and look at, say, the Fib Pro Micro, which is the one I've been talking about, it has a look back period. You can see how far back it's looking back to right there. So it's looking back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bars. It's specified in seconds. But it's looking back 50 seconds. Is that right? Let me turn on the toolbar for the macro. It's looking back, yeah, 50 to 300 seconds. We can make it be a little less reactive by making it look back a lot further. Let's make it look back 600 seconds. See how it jumped all the way back to here? That means it won't move quite as much with the market because it's averaging and working with a lot more data. It does align itself on the Fibonacci lines that you would have if you were showing them, and that's what it's really doing underneath the hood. It's working from in this area from here to here, aligning itself on the high and low Fibonacci. You can see it just exceeded down below enough to have entered a trade, but it was already in the middle of a trade, so it won't. But what I did is I made it a little bit more conservative by making it look back further, and I can set that over here in the robot, or I can set it over here inside the console. You define things in the console so that they can be saved and reused. It also is a matter of, because of the way the indicators work, you don't want to define them every single time you bring one up because there are just so many parameters. It's better to save the parameters in between. If I go back over here to the engine trader, see how the robot button says it's waiting for a reset? That's the one that's highlighted in blue now, and it's flashing and it says robot waiting for reset. It's an important consideration of the way we program this, that after the market moves in a particular direction, we don't want to try over and over again on that in that direction, because we found that usually the second or third try are in the middle of a reversal. We just don't want to go there. So we have it wait for reset. Now the reset line is defined over here. I'm sorry, let's see, go back to the trigger alerts. Right here, reset on crossover indicator, the FibPro macro midline. That's what the long resets on. The short resets, I think it's the same, FibPro macro, the midline. And what that means to me over here is the gold rectangle and the gold dashed line indicate what's happening with the FibPro macro. The price has to get all the way back above this line before the robot resets itself. So it's not going to take any trades. Now, like every other single parameter, you could override that. For example, if right now we think we still like the short market here, we really want to get into it, we want the robot to be able to trade it if it likes the volume, all I have to do is turn the robot off, turn it back on again. Now we're looking for trades. And actually placed a limit order just now, and it's waiting to see if it gets filled. If the market moves in the wrong direction, it won't get filled. There it got filled. See if we can actually make money. Violating the terms of the robot, let's see if we can make money. I don't really like to do that, but you can. And you might program your robot just to enter trades, and then you yourself manage the exiting and do the contract management. I still got 3 positions open, and the price is at 1382.8. You can see the 3 contract trails, the cyan, the magenta, and the green. The cyan is the laggard because that's the runner. They're following the price down. If the price goes back 3 ticks, it's going to close those 2 positions. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want that. I want the green, the first position, to be a little bit less conservative. So I bump it back up a little. And now let's see what develops here. Closed all 3 at the same time. Made money, not a lot, but it was a good trade. And again, the robot wouldn't have taken that trade normally. It only took it because we turned it off and back on, essentially resetting it. Now it's waiting for reset again. We do that because, well, we have a lot of experience with this. And when you're not monitoring it, it's best to try once and then wait till it reverses and go on from there. So what I'm going to do is accelerate it again until it gets past the reset. See, it's waiting for reset. When it crosses the gold dashed line, the robot will reset. And you can see, based on this last series of bars, it was a good idea to wait. There was no reason to be in the market this whole 15, 20 bars, because all it's doing is meandering along. Eventually, the mean of the Fibonacci rectangle there is going to fall back down to the rising price, and then it'll reset. So there, now it's reset, and now it's active, and it's looking for a trade again. And again, the way we have it defined, over here in the triggers, I have all 4 of my indicators participating, but any 3 can collaborate on entering a short trade. Over on the long, I have it set up almost the same, except to go long, one of the 3 must be the volume indicator. Normally you wouldn't set those up differently, but that's the way it's set up now. So now let's just watch and see what happens. The volume indicator is just mute, partly because I pushed it up over that 200 mark for a fixed threshold. So let's accelerate it and see if we can get any volume out of anything here. It's a pretty good time of day for it in the London market. So basically, we made the volume a lot more conservative by doing it. There was one. And it entered the trade, liked it, made a little money on one of the contracts. Again, there's a series of 6 bars here, here over to here. Let me turn on my crosshair pointer. From here to here, where the thermodynamic is calling out for a long. It's just crying for a long. You can see everything's blue here. All but one is blue here. Everything's blue here. All but one's blue here. All but one's blue here. It's just saying, go long, go long. But it doesn't actually do anything until it meets another indicator calling for the same thing. In this case, it's the volume and the fib pro micro. However, the robot's waiting to reset. So even though it said, I would trade here, and you can tell that by the blue dot, it doesn't because we're still waiting for a reset on the robot. And again, we like that feature. That's a very important aspect of programming a robot. And it's sort of not optional. If you want it to not reset, you have to decide to stand there and monitor trades. And when you get into a trade, if you like the way it's going, turn the robot off, back on, and you have reset it to manually reset it. Okay, we're going to accelerate again until we get to the reset point. So when we do a robot, we like to just reset it, just cross that gold line. We like to have a robot that trades 5 to 10 times a day. This trading every 10 minutes, like my gold robot here, it just isn't for an unattended robot. An unattended robot should have extremely conservative entry points and exit points that manage capital and maximize profit, especially with respect to preserving your capital. This robot that I have isn't like that. It really requires me to sit here and sort of watch it run so that I can manage bad trades and get them out of it manually. But again, that's all about programming a robot. If you acquire the software, that's what you do. What I'm going to do is put the volume back to its original setting, and you'll see it bump back down to 200% of the average of the last 50 bars, and that'll open us up to more trades. Right in the middle of this bar that we're on, you can see that the Fib Pro Micro is calling for a short, but it's calling in vain because nobody else is with it. None of the other indicators are calling for any kind of trade at all. Now, still in the bar, it could change. You could still meet the volume threshold, and either the Fib Pro macro or the thermodynamic could call for a trade. I'm also going to set my micro back to just 300 seconds, which will make it less conservative. The micro is still shouting short, short. If you watch the thermodynamic, you can see it drifting into short. See how all 5 of these indicators down here are calling short, but we still don't have short up here. And again, I'll describe to you what these all mean if you acquire the software. But basically, it's a compilation of 6 different indicators, and it uses a method of collaboration between the 6 to decide whether or not it's going to call for a short or a long. Let's accelerate it again and see where we go. Again, you're going to have some volume for anybody to go with me here on short. There's volume. And it was a loser. So maybe making the volume less conservative is a bad idea, right? Fortunately, you can modify all these things as it's going on and tweak your settings and get them just right for what your money management demands are and for what your levels of risk are, and also for the way you like to trade. It's a pretty slow market here. I'm going to accelerate and see if we can get through this more interesting. That was a nice trade. Let's expand it and look at it and see what happened. So every now and then NinjaTrader does this. It shows the trade on the previous bar, and that has to do with the timing of when the brokerage signal gets recorded versus when the bar is drawn on your computer with respect to your computer's clock. So this was right at the very beginning of the next bar, and it showed it in the previous bar. But that's a known bug and one that everybody has to live with who uses NinjaTrader. So we got in on this bar. You can see up here that the Fib Pro Micro is calling for a short. You can see by the vertical line that the thermodynamic is calling for a short. And you can see by the circle around the threshold indicator and the volume indicator that it's calling for a short. So we had three altogether calling out for short, and it went short. See this blue or cyan B right over here? The B. That says that the third position, the runner, hit its B trigger, and that's why it bumped from here up to here. This, I think that's a C, a magenta C underneath there. That means that the second position hit its C stop already. It bumped right to its C stop. It bypassed, blew right past the B trigger and went up to its C trigger. The P that you see down here, kind of hiding in here, indicates that the green position, that is the first position, hit its profit target and closed out on the profit target. It bumped the stop up to there, took a reversal on it, and closed right out. Let's make this a little narrower again. It's sort of dumb luck that I'm having 90% winners and 10% losers on these trades. Usually the ratio with this strategy on replay is about 7-3. And in real life, about 50-50. But 50-50 is very good because the robot's programmed to get out of bad trades early and stay in long trades late. So even though I'm about 50-50 on trade entry, whether or not it's going to be a good trade, I'm about 70-30 on profit versus loss. So here we're in a nice looking trade. Again, we're going short. The whole market of this morning of, not sure what day we're replaying, I guess it's the 22nd of June, is a just slightly falling market all morning long. So my first position got stopped out. The second position hit its B trigger and jumped right down there and then got stopped out. Third position still floating and waiting. It moved off of its fixed loss stop into the initial. You can see right here, it's now in its initial trigger. That's what the I stands for right there. That's why there was movement from here to here. And that just got stopped out with a loss on two of the positions and a break even on the third position. Another little trade here going long. You can see our third position, the runner, is just hanging in there, waiting to see if the price will go up. It's only moved off of the fixed loss stop into the initial trailing stop, so it might linger out. Nope, it got pulled up there and then got canceled at a plus $70 or so gain. Again, take all this with a grain of salt. Everybody who trades knows that replay data is really only useful for testing functionality, not for testing profitability. An interesting thing happened here. I want to show you. See over here to the left, the thick light green line is the threshold line. The the dark green thin line is the minimum line. The threshold line has fallen below the minimum. Remember, the threshold is defined, if you come and look at the top up here, as 200% of the last 50 bars, which means if you take the average of the last 50 bars and double it, that's what that line is at. So right here it says 53. That means the average of the last 50 bars is about 27.5. The minimum line says take 100% of the last 10,000 bars. It gives you a very straight line. So the last 10,000 bars, the 100% of the average, which means the actual average of those bars, is right here at 67.68. The volume threshold fell below. This is where the minimum comes into play. It has to be over the minimum, no matter what the threshold is at. Back over here, it's obvious. It's over the minimum. It's over the threshold. You get into a trade. Over here, the minimum is your stopgap. It says, whoa, even if the threshold qualifies, I don't care. You're not qualifying anything unless you're over me. And that's more of like a safety valve to prevent you from falling into really, really slow markets like it looks like this one is. Look at that. Look at that threshold fall and fall, having a really, really slow period of time here. You could still get into a trade, but the volume has to come over the minimum and the threshold, like it did right there. That was a good trade. And see what happened? The volume is this blue line. It's almost obliterated by the yellow line, but we've got volume up to there on this first bar, and then volume up to there on the second, there on the third, there on the fourth, there on the fifth. So it did actually exceed the minimum volume as well as threshold volume to get into that trade. There's been so little action that I hesitate to set up a long and short straddle, but let's do it anyway, just because it'd be fun to see it happen. Okay, so the way that I set that up is I've got these stop order ticks right here, the 10, it's set at 10 right now. That doesn't affect the running of the robot at all. That just says where it's going to put the line for the long stop or the short stop when you first hit the button relative to the current price. I'm going to make it a little smaller. Let's go 8 ticks. And then I'm going to turn on the long stop. And you'll see that up here, right there. And turn on the short stop. You see that up here, right here. And basically, it's just looking to enter the market when it hits those, regardless of what the robot might call for. I can turn off the robot if I want while I do this and just look at the long and short stops, or I can leave the robot run. It won't enter two trades. It'll only enter whichever trade executes first. But it'll watch all three if I want. I could even come up here and just say, boom, go short, or go long at market. But I'd like to see what happens with what I've got going on here. So I'm going to turn off the robot and basically sit here on a straddle. This is the kind of thing you do at a news event. It's drifting down toward the short. And so what I'm going to do is pull the long down with it. Bring that down 4 ticks. Okay, it entered the short and then reversed almost immediately. It went back over the gold line and says, whoa, I don't want to be here. So the short reversed out. I made no money on that. That was a big loser. But the long is still sitting there waiting to enter. Right here. Let's see if it comes back and pulls back to that position. I'm going to accelerate it just a little so we don't have to watch grass grow here. Still just floating along. Again, this ignores any indicators that the robot might rely on. All it's doing is when it hits the price action, it enters the trade with all the stops that you've defined previously. That was a bad trade, got knocked out right away. But again, that's the feature that we're talking about there. See how we entered the short and the long straddle at the same time. So let's turn back on the robot. And let it rip for a few minutes here. Here's a trade, it's going long. Still have 2 positions open, they closed out. Here's one where you kind of wish it hadn't closed out quite so fast. But, you know, you don't know in advance. That's why you have trails and stops. Takes the emotion out of it. Now, if I really still like the long action that's going on here, I would turn off the robot and turn it back on again. And that resets it manually. I'm still not sure, though, because it's falling back down. And you can see that the yellow line, which represents our crossover reset line, is creeping up to catch up with this new price action as the price starts to come back down. Go ahead and accelerate it up so it can hit the reset. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in this market. Just floating along. There it goes up. And I didn't do the reset, so I missed that. And again, I'm a proponent of that. I like having my robot just wait for the reset. I'm good with that. I don't mind missing a trade. I just don't want to get into bad trades. There we're reset. That gray bar there represents a session break. And see down here that strategy profit and loss is reset to 0. That's defined over here in the session screen. We just went past 8 a.m. and flipped to 8:01 a.m. Now my chart, it says 5:01 a.m. That's because I'm running in Pacific Standard Time and the robot's set up to operate on Eastern Time. So the chart shows my time. The robot runs on Eastern Time. And that's set right here, Eastern Time Zone. And the sessions are set up right here, 1 to 8. That's going to be my London session. 8:01 to 1600. That's going to be my New York session. I leave a gap in there so that it's obvious on the chart, and also because there are features that we're working on that require a little bit of time between sessions. Like, for example, this Start Sharing Images button. We're putting up a website so that it'll record every single one, an image of every one of your trades. So you can go back using the website and search by date and time and whether they're long and short and so forth, and actually see the images recorded of your trades. Okay, but you can also see the green line at the top of each of these sessions? That indicates that the session is defined to reset the profit and loss. I can show you what that looks like right here. See the checkbox, Reset P&L at start of session? This is the 1 to 8 a.m. session, and it resets the profit and loss. Now, when you're running, you might want to say, well, whoa, I like that for money management, but I still want to see what happened over the course of this whole robot. And that's easy too. I can go back to the NinjaTrader Control Center and just look at my strategy and see I've got a realized profit of 550, and it still keeps all my orders over the whole time it's been running, as well as the executions. It's 2:47 in my part of the world. And in 3 minutes, we're going to call it a day with this webinar. So there is a short trade. And again, you can see who's calling for it. The volume threshold has worked its way back up above the minimum because we had some big volume back over here. Threshold at 200% of the last 50 bars is all the way up over 200. The minimum's still down around 68 because, again, it's looking back 10,000 bars. It called for a trade. The thermodynamic called for a trade, and the FitPro Micro called for a trade. So we got in short. The scalper got knocked out right away with a small profit. Let's see how we do with the other two positions. Just to clarify, when I'm talking about positions, we're talking about contract management. I've got my scalper, my mid-runner, and my runner. My scalper is very simple. It runs with a trail of 5. If it hits 10, it takes profit. The mid-runner only uses the trigger B. It has a fixed stop loss of 7, which means I can't lose more than 7 ticks on a trade. Well, I could lose more with slippage, but I don't get out of a trade if it's greater than 7 ticks. I mean, if it's less than 7 ticks off. If I hit 7 ticks, boom, I exit the trade. And after it goes up a little, my trailing stop of 10 goes into play. It has to go up 3 ticks for that trailing stop of 10. However, I'm still pretty conservative here. When it hits 5 ticks above the entry point, it bumps my trail up to 5 ticks. And I haven't done that yet on this trade that we're in right here. The runner, on the other hand, has a lot more room to work. A fixed loss stop of 8, can't lose more than 8 ticks, and an initial trail of 12. You have to get up 8 ticks for that initial trail to go into play. If you look at the trade right now, nothing's happening. It's just floating. I haven't even hit, these are both the fixed loss stops. Haven't even hit the initial stop on either of these two positions. You can see with that little tiny green eye, well, I could see it for a second, in this bar, that the first position did hit its initial stop. In other words, it did get above the trigger. Oh yeah, it's the same as the trigger, so it doesn't really matter. So anyway, let's see if this trade develops into anything, and then I'm going to sign off. Unfortunately, my volume is coming down, down, down. Yeah, got stopped out for a loss. Now here's an interesting part of the trading management. See, I had a trade right away that lost money. I entered this session at 0, and boom, I'm down 380 bucks right there. Well, if you look down here, my loss limit is $600. Well, since I'm trading gold, I've got $10 per tick to play with. Right here it says, trading restricted to 22 total ticks. That means that the difference between 380 and 600 is $220, and sure enough it is. That 22 ticks represents $220 of ticks. So I'm at -380. What's going to happen here? Well, my loss limit of 600 is a pretty hard stop. I don't go below that ever, as long as this checkbox is checked here. The loss limit checkbox is checked. Let's go back and look at the strategy definition to see what that means. 22 ticks. What could we enter with 22 ticks? Well, I've got 5 ticks in 2 contracts. See right here. In my first position, that's 10 ticks. I could definitely enter those. My mid-runner has 7 ticks in each contract. That means that would get me up to, if I had 7 to 10, that gets me to 17. However, if I were to add another 7 on top of that, that would take me to 24, and I don't have 24 ticks. I've only got 22 ticks. So if we get into another trade, we're going to be limited to 3 contracts, 2 scalpers, and a mid-runner. Let's see what happens here. Still waiting for reset. There's a reset. Okay, that entered and exit in the same bar and lost money. But look at that text right there. It says limited to 3 contracts. You can see the 3 it entered. 2 of the scalper, 1 of the mid-runner, just like I said. So now you're really, it's basically a no-loss situation. You didn't lose very much. So now you're limited to 21 ticks instead of 22. It could still enter 3 contracts one more time. And if you make money, then it'll get above that, and you won't have to be limited at all. But if it loses money, then it says, oh, this session just didn't work out for us. See, there we are down to 4 total ticks. That means we won't enter any more trades in this session. Now, like everything, you can override that, but we won't worry about that for now. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. This has been great. Had a really good opportunity to demonstrate the robot building software and also the running of the robot, the engine trader tool strip, as well as how to modify the indicator parameters while you're on the way. Let me know if you need more information. I'd be happy to provide. Thanks again. And